Happy generic time of day. Product people, this is Alan Neal for the PDM Show at the PDM Show on Twitter and Facebook. PDM.show on the web. Having quite a few conversations lately with folks about how to structure their product manager or product management job search. So I thought I'd share some ideas on that topic on this Drivecast. It's kind of funny or ironic or whatever. Product management people, in my experience, tend to be very process oriented, very structured in their approach. We learn very structured methodologies for managing our products, but when it comes time for a job search, a lot of folks seem to throw that, throw all those skills out or not utilize them for their own marketing efforts, which I find kind of strange. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of the framework that I've settled on after coaching. I've been coaching folks on their product management career and on job search for at least 5 years now, probably more. And what I typically do is I typically suggest that folks don't just blast out there that they're looking for a job in product management and expect that something's going to come to them. I suggest that just as if they were, think of their job search as if they're managing a product, which they are, and the product just happens to be them. So that's the approach I suggest people take to it. And if you talk to guys like Steve Johnson from Under 10 Consulting, he has a presentation that he often does at product camps and whatnot, called "What to Do When the Product Is You." So certainly, if you want to Google that and check that out, you can at under10consulting.com. But basically, you want to manage yourself as a product. So when we have a product, what do? When we inherit a new product, well, we look at target markets, we look at target customers or prospects, and we look at their needs, and then we assess our capabilities and try to come up with unique value propositions for those needs. So we should be doing the same thing. We should be doing the same thing here with our job search. So what I typically, the simple framework I typically suggest for folks is just open up a spreadsheet or take a piece of paper, and you want to basically make some columns for each of the different dimensions associated with your search. So one dimension, and you can think of these from a product perspective as target markets. So one dimension is industry, right? What industry do you want to work in? A lot of times I'll work with folks, and maybe they've been in telco their entire career, or they've been in financial services, but maybe they don't want to work in that industry anymore. So make a list of the industries. Now, when we make these lists of these dimensions or these target markets, we want to have at least 3 is what I recommend. It's just a good, small number. So have 3 industries that you would be interested in working in. And an industry is a large grouping. So financial services is an industry, telecommunications is an industry, food and beverage is an industry, travel and tourism. So you get the idea there. So make a list of at least 3 and not more than 5 industries that you'd be interested in working in. The next dimension that I suggest people look at is what domains are you interested in, and this one's a little fuzzier, but whereas industries tend to be vertical, think more of domains as being horizontal. So, for example, a huge domain and a popular one right now is artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that might be a domain that you're interested in. Rewards and points is a domain that's horizontal across many industries. So you might want to look at that. So try to come up with between 3 to 5 domains that you're interested in, subject areas that you're interested in working in. So that's the second dimension. Third dimension that I suggest people look at is geography. So what's your geographic market that you want to go after? Are you very focused and limited? Maybe you're within a specific metropolitan area. Like I'm based in the Toronto area here, so maybe I want to say, listen, I can only work for companies that are within the Greater Toronto Area, what we call the GTA. Maybe you're more flexible. Maybe you're either earlier in your career or later in your career, and you don't have a lot of things tying you down. So maybe you can look at Silicon Valley, New York. Maybe you can look at London in the UK. Maybe you can look at Australia. So that's the next dimension I suggest people look at is geography. The next dimension after that I suggest people map out. So after you have 3 to 5 geographies, the next dimension that I suggest that people look at is company size. And why I say company size is, typically different size companies have different cultures and different levels. They're on different places on the continuum from chaos at a completely new startup to stagnating, stifling kind of bureaucracy, potentially at the other end of the spectrum for very large, mature organizations. So again, this is not universally true, but typically people will have a personality and a disposition for the type of environment that they want to work in, and I just call that dimension size of company. You could come up with another name for it, but basically that dimension is what kind of environment do you want to work in terms of the size and maturity of the organization. So that's the next dimension to look at. So let's review. So far we've got industry vertical as a dimension. We've got domains, which are horizontal, as a dimension. We've got geography as a dimension. We've got size of company as a dimension. And then the final one that I suggest people use is identify between 3 and 5 roles or titles that you'd be interested in and qualified in working in. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we look at product management and related, when you end up talking to people and applying for specific positions, you'll apply for roles and titles. So this is where it comes in, both what level you're going after, right? Are you going after a VP level, director level, manager level, associate level, coordinator, but also the specific title. So if we look in the areas of product management, obviously product manager becomes an obvious one, but there's also product owner, there's product management director, there's VP of product management. And then I really coach folks to not be too narrow here and think about whether there are product management adjacent roles. And I do this especially for folks that might be earlier on in their career, and maybe they're trying to jump directly into product management. And I strongly recommend that they look at other roles that will lead them to success in product management in the future. So good examples of that are pre-sales engineering, if you're technical, customer support, if maybe you're not so technical, user experience and design is huge, obviously, right now, and that will lead to success in product management in the future. So the last dimension that I suggest folks look at are roles or job titles that they're interested in. So that gives you, if I'm doing the math quickly in my head here, I think that gives you 5 or 6 dimensions. Create a spreadsheet or a table, list those out, and now you've got something specific to work with. So, the next step here is then to imagine that, okay, we can only, a spreadsheet only represents 2 dimensions, but if we do the math here and we've got 5 dimensions to work with, then we have many possible combinations, because you can say, for example, if my industry dimension was financial services, if my domain dimension was AI and machine learning, and my geography dimension was Toronto, and my size of company dimension was small startup, and my role dimension was product manager. That's just one cell. That's just one combination of, and excuse me, I'm not a mathematician here, but I think we're talking about exponential math here. So the total number of combinations of roles that could be of interest to you would be 5, because you've got 5 dimensions to the power of 5. Which is 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, which I'm not going to pull out a calculator and do that math, but that's a lot of possible roles. But really the key thing here is, now when you're going out and presenting yourself, and we'll talk about that next, you can now be specific, because what I'm going to say next here, and what I typically recommend after this is that for people to be able to help you, you need to be able to, help people help you, and saying, oh, I'm interested in a job in product management. Oh, what industry or what? No, I don't care. I need a job. Can I have a job really quickly? People can't help you with that. But if you're networking and you're going out for coffee with friends, you're updating your Facebook, you're updating your LinkedIn, if you can be really specific and say, hey, I'm looking for something in the domain of machine learning and artificial intelligence in the financial services industry within the GTA, now that's something specific. Now somebody hearing that can say, wait a second, yeah, I know a guy that I used to go to college with that's at XYZ company. My brother-in-law is in that space. Now that's something tangible that people can lock into and help you with. So how do you get that word out? So that's the next step. So there's multiple channels, right? So again, we're thinking about ourselves as a product. So now we have to look at our channel strategy, right? How are we going to go to market? How are we going to make our target customers and prospects aware of our product, right? And aware of our features. So let's go over some of those. I'm a huge fan and proponent of meetup groups, and this has really become easier with the advent of things like meetup.com, of various associations and clubs, all of which you can search and identify online. So I'm a huge fan of those things, because you can now use your 5-dimensional spreadsheet there to target the meetup. So you might look up, and let's say, again, we'll continue the same example. So let's say I'm interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning in the Greater Toronto area. I just go to meetup.com and I search on artificial intelligence and machine learning in the Toronto area, and I might find there's a meetup group for that. That's a great place for me to go and and share with folks my availability and interest. Same thing on the role, right? Let's say I'm going after a product manager role, in the Greater Toronto area. Well, I can go to meetup.com, or I can go to meetup.com and look for meetup groups in Toronto that are around around the practice of product management. So, huge proponent of those. You can make face-to-face connections. The next one that I strongly recommend, and I've been a huge fan of, since day one, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn's very powerful. You can use LinkedIn in a number of ways. There's certainly groups that you can join and participate in, and you can use the same approach for those groups that you do with the meetup.com. Search for groups that tick the boxes of your various dimensions. The other way you can use LinkedIn is, the whole premise of LinkedIn, really comes from this old scientific study around the strength of weak ties, which is to say that chances are you don't know somebody directly in machine learning and AI in the Toronto area in product management, but chances are much higher that somebody that does know somebody in that area. So on LinkedIn, what I recommend people do is I'll connect with you, but for anybody that you're connected to on LinkedIn, you can then search, and now that you've got your 5 dimensions of criteria, you can now search for connections to your connections that have some relevance to those areas. And I find people are very open and approachable, again, if you be specific, right? That this is what you're looking for. You're looking to network, you want to meet people, you want to learn about an industry. But it's much more effective now, because rather than going to those LinkedIn connections, I could go and just send a generic message to all of my LinkedIn contacts saying, hey guys, I'm looking for a job, in product management. Can you help me out? People aren't going to be able to do much, if anything, with that. But now that you can target and you can say, hey, Joe, I noticed that you're connected to Sue, and Sue works in this software company in fintech, and they seem to be doing some neat things with artificial intelligence. That's an area that I'm really interested in. Could you connect me to her, and maybe I can have a quick chat with her to get some advice? That's going to be something that will likely yield you a lot better results than a very unfocused request. So we'll move on from there. Next one, which I'll talk about, but I'm not. I don't tend to recommend that people put a lot of faith in this. Is recruiters and headhunters, and this is just my personal experience and perspective, but recruiters and headhunters can be hit and miss, and especially for folks earlier in their career. I just worry that that the job seeker gets on an emotional roller coaster with a recruiter, not really understanding the allegiances and the motivations of the recruiter. The recruiter is one of two modes, right? They're either a recruiter for themselves, and they're trying to find candidates for an organization, and a number of other recruiters are also doing that, as well as individuals, or they're a recruiter that's on an exclusive contract with the company, or they might even work internally at the company. Those recruiters, that second mode, that's a little bit, in my mind, a little bit more valuable to you as a job seeker, because those recruiters tend to have a very vested interest in not just landing you in the position, but actually in your ongoing success, because they're going to have an ongoing relationship with that organization. Myself, I've seen through my own experience and others over the years that you just have to be careful with this. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. Certainly work with them, but don't give them all your time. Definitely, I would say this should be a smaller proportion of your energy. I would put I would put most of your energy into networking through LinkedIn and through meetup groups. I would put next bucket, maybe so let's call that networking piece on LinkedIn. That's kind of like farming, right? You're planting seeds, and you're planting them, based on your 5 dimensions, and waiting for them to grow. The next mode that you can get into is hunting. So again, now you've got very specific criteria. So you're not just hunting for any job. You're hunting, now you can go onto the job boards and companies' career sites, and you can do very targeted research. So you can identify all of the companies within the Toronto area that are in, focused on financial services, and doing something with AI, and you can see whether any of those companies are hiring. You can search job boards based on that criteria. So now you can do hunting, but you can do very targeted hunting, versus what I tend to call the spray and pray type of approach, where you just apply to any job that seems even remotely close match to what you're looking for. So in terms of energy for your job search, I typically recommend, put about 50 to 60% of your energy in farming, in networking. Put about 30% of your energy into hunting, but again, very focused hunting based upon your spreadsheet, your dimensions that you've come up with. And then the last 10% you can put into recruiters and headhunters. But like I say, be careful with that and manage your expectations accordingly. The last thing I'm going to mention here is in addition to articulating through your spreadsheet all of the things that you are definitely interested in, it can also be very beneficial to have the negative list as well. So in those dimensions, it's also very valuable if there's industries, for example, that you do not want to work in, like telecom, let's say, or like financial services. If you know that there's roles that you definitely do not want to do, if you know that there's locations that you definitely do not want to work in, then that can be very helpful to articulate as well, because then, again, whether you're farming or hunting, now you can know where not to look, and now you can advise your helpers who will be there for you. Now you can advise them of the things that you're definitely not interested in, so that you don't waste their time. So this has been Alan Neal, Drivecast for the PDM Show, at the PDM Show on both Twitter and Facebook, pdm.show on the web. Basically providing folks with a bit of a simple but effective framework to manage their job hunt as if they're managing a product. The product is you, so you should take a rigorous approach to product managing yourself and your job search, as you would if you were managing a software product. Talk to you on the next one.